In this video, I'll be continuing my discussion with you all regarding the most important position in one quarterback fantasy football leagues for this season. We'll be diving into 3 more players in the middle rounds of our drafts at the running back position that I think are must-have players at their current draft prices. For the purposes of today's video, I'll be classifying the middle rounds of our drafts as rounds 4 through 7, and I encourage you guys to pay really close attention to the ADP of each of the 3 players I talked through in today's video. I post fantasy football videos just like this almost every single day across multiple platforms, and we've already got a couple similar videos out to this one, so go check those out and click that subscribe button if you're new around here. Make sure to let me know your thoughts on the running back position down in the comment section below, and let's get started. So one of the things I find most interesting each summer here as we're getting ready for our fantasy drafts, maybe you've already drafted a few leagues this year, maybe not, maybe you're still preparing for that first draft, is how these prices in ADP, that being average draft positions, how those change over time here. If you go back and look at the data from May and look at where these players are going at right now, there's either slight or very extreme differences in some cases based off of news, based off of training camp hype. There's a variety of different factors that are going to influence that ADP. And today, all of these players, since I've begun drafting this offseason, have seen some sort of, one shape or another in terms of where their draft price started at and where it currently is now. So Travis Etienne is the first player I want to talk through in today's video. Again, my first must-own running back in the middle rounds of our drafts this season. His draft price is the first pick currently in the 4th round based off of Underdog Fantasy ADP, and I believe they have the best ADP data and values in the entire fantasy industry right now. There is, a financial investment behind every draft choice on their platform, so there's, every pick is meaningful there. By the way, if you guys want a free draft guide or site-wide access on sizzlefantasy.com, that is my website. All you gotta do is head over to Underdog. The link is in the description of today's video, and use promo code SFS when you sign up and deposit $10 or more. So Etienne here, it's kind of an interesting dive in. It's kind of an interesting breakdown because we don't have any analytics or numbers to look at from last season. Really, the only thing that we can use to guide ourselves for his outlook for this season is watching practice film from the Jaguars. Obviously, training camp this offseason. Now they just played in the Hall of Fame game, which Etienne didn't play in. And then really just kind of evaluating Doug Peterson's career as an offensive coordinator, play caller, and head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously now taking over in his first year on that new Jaguars regime. So there's really not too much data to work with here. Travis Etienne is primarily a projection-based pick here. This is a player that, because of his skill set and because of the things he put on display on tape in his last days at Clemson, I'm still feeling very optimistic about this situation. I think this is a player who right now, at this 4th round draft price, possesses currently league-winning upside. The reason for that is I see this skill set, I see this potential usage here in Jacksonville in a very similar light to the way I see Alvin Kamara and how his career is kind of unfolded with the New Orleans Saints. Now, of course, there are differences in the situations. They are still very different players while they still have their similarities and the reasons. Obviously, their pass-catching skill set being the most primary reason for me making that comparison. Their body types are somewhat similar as well. Not necessarily large or bruising running backs, rather more athletic players you want out in space, very elusive athletes, guys, again, who are very skilled catchers of the football. The reason that you see this translation being so positive here is you've already got some pre-established chemistry between Etienne and Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback here. Also entering into his 2nd season, I should note, I kind of, briefly glazed over it, but Etienne had a Liz Frank injury last season. That's why we didn't see him yet in his rookie year. That's why we have no data. That was suffered last preseason. And he ultimately never wound up on the field, never ended up getting a chance to start last season. So we're getting our first glimpse of Travis Etienne action here in 2022. Some numbers, we don't have much to work with from Etienne, but what I did like to see is that last season, little preview there, is that Travis Etienne, the Jacksonville Jaguars, actually, and that being Trevor Lawrence specifically, led the National Football League in check down passes last year, primarily a smart and seasoned veteran quarterback, which Trevor Lawrence is not. However, However, he is a very, very rare talent. What they'll do when they're under pressure, what they'll do when they get in a pickle is they'll check the football down to the running back, find them in space, get that ball flanked out wide, and have their player out running with the opportunity to make something happen with the football in his hands. So not necessarily the best stat in terms of overall offensive production. If you're checking the football down an extreme amount of times, you're going to limit your overall upside. But with the role Travis Etienne is playing for this team, that obviously bodes well. You're seeing kind of a connection and reason why you might see him get some more passing opportunities under a coaching staff with Doug Peterson, who we kind of touched on earlier, as a head coach, offensive play caller, and an offensive coordinator during his tenure in his NFL career. He has had his lead running back in his NFL offenses see 4 or more opportunities per game in the passing game. So on top of the rushing involvement, I don't think Travis Etienne will be your stereotypical traditional workhorse RB1, but what he will be is very involved in the passing game. He's been the star of the Jaguars training camp so far, and he's been a guy lining up all over the field. Those opportunities in the passing game can come in a very versatile array of looks and different plays drawn up for him. And I think he'll, at the end of the day, be someone that on a per-touch basis is very, very efficient. The one question mark I do have, though, is the potential use case and involvement for him in the red area, obviously the red zone. How many goal line touches will he see? What is his touchdown ceiling for this year, especially in what is previously in the recent past year been a very poor offensive attack overall? This is stuff that, with James Robinson reportedly being ahead of schedule in his recovery, he may see some run on the goal line there. But going back to that Alvin Kamara comparison I made, and ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to really matter how much Doug Peterson loves Travis Etienne and how much he wants him touching the rock. But what we did see with Alvin Kamara is, despite the fact that he had guys, bigger frames like Latavius Murray, more true and natural power back builds, Kamara was still getting that lead work on the goal line, and that's how in 2020 Alvin Kamara finished as the running back 1 overall in fantasy. It was because he led the National Football League in total touchdowns at the running back position, and Travis Etienne could do something similar to that. Again, I don't think that this Jags offense has necessarily the same firepower and ceiling to finish or to enable a finish of the number 1 overall touchdown marker for Travis Etienne. Again, that is my biggest question mark for him this season, is how much work will he see in that area of the field, and is he ultimately might be forced to create a lot of explosive plays to score those touchdowns from outside that red zone 20-yard line and inward marker in terms of opponent territory. So Travis Etienne for me, again, pass catching upside, efficiency, PPR value here, league winning upside, whether it's top 8, top 10 upside at the position. I think that he is going to exceed his draft price here. Currently going as the RB16, you can really see how the infrastructure is built for him to have the chance to outproduce that number. Breece Hall is my next player here. He is the RB18 off the board right now, going in the second half of the 4th round here in 12-team formats, the 7th pick overall in that round. And I actually think that Breece Hall has a higher ceiling than Travis Etienne does this year in terms of the way I think he can be used in this offense. Now, obviously, Etienne's pass catching ability gives him, kind of the sky's the limit type mentality, but there are those flaws and those red flags in terms of goal line usage. Breece Hall is not someone that I'm concerned about that. This is a prototypical running back, lead back, RB1, workhorse, bell cow, whatever you want to call it. There's all the synonyms in the book there. He can see all of those touches, all those high-level opportunities, and I don't worry about other competition infringing upon his ability to be a dominant running back 1 in fantasy this year. You don't have to draft him as such. You don't have to rely and lean on him to be that first guy for your fantasy football team this year, but just know I do think he does have top 5 upside if he bangs his head in the goalpost here and crushes his ADP and ultimately capitalizes on that upside and ceiling that he has to the highest potential here. But again, the size projects him to be a lead back for an NFL offense. He projects to have a high share of this Jets offense this season at 5'11", 217 pounds, an early second-round draft pick. That's basically as good as it gets for running backs in today's day and age. We did have 2 first-round running backs this past season in 2021, but the 2022 draft had 0 first-round running backs. Breece Hall was the most highly coveted name off the board this year, and I think he will be very, very factored into this offense. So what do we have to work with here in New York? You've got an improved team, a general manager who I think has done a phenomenal job addressing the offensive side of the ball, not only just by drafting Breece Hall here, but really by addressing and adding multiple skill players into this offensive room to make this offense a balanced attack and to really give them an infrastructure to have success here. Zach Wilson's a really talented arm and a guy who can make a lot of plays off script, but by surrounding him with guys like Elijah Moore, having Corey Davis as your wide receiver 3, Garrett Wilson, who I think in a few years' time could be one of the best wide receivers in the entire league, adding a really deep tight end core, improving the offensive line. You just had Mekhi Becton go down, which is a huge loss, and then they turn around and make a really savvy veteran free agent acquisition in Dwayne Brown, left tackle, who has played for the Texans and the Seahawks. Very, very good player. Again, he is getting up there in age, but it's not like he's a long-term fix. He is on a 2-year deal, though. I think that bringing him in helps at least patch up and repair some of that lost damage that was obviously kind of surrendered and, coughed up with that Becton kneecap issue. But you've got solid blocking, the best blocking the Jets have had up front in probably 5 or so years. And I think obviously that'll play a big role in Breece Hall's upside here. Ultimately, Zach Wilson's evolution and ability to evolve here, step up to the plate and deliver will be a huge factor in the Jets' offensive ceiling overall, which is something that has a big impact on running backs' ability to be dominant in fantasy. Obviously, the better offense you have, the better opportunities you're going to have in the red zone, the more scoring opportunities your team will have, and thus trickle down to the running back position, the wide receivers, the tight ends. All the position groups benefit from playing in a better NFL offense. And again, this might not be a top 5 team. This might not necessarily be quite to the extent of this year's Cincinnati Bengals, but they should get better. This should be a team that is much improved from last season, and I think Breece Hall reaps a lot of the rewards of the situation. Also, one last thing we have to touch on here is the Michael Carter situation. I personally feel that Breece Hall is very underrated as a pass-catching asset. I think because of his size, his prototypical, he kind of looks like Jonathan Taylor in pads. This is a guy who has very, very good straight line speed, a 4.39 40-yard dash, and again, can play physical, can break tackles, is somewhat elusive as well. He does just about everything right. This is a really polished and really complete skill set. So I'm not so worried that Michael Carter is going to come in here and steal all the passing work or all the third down opportunities, or even, there's some Michael Carter guys out there who think he's going to see a significant portion of the Jets rushing offense this season. I just don't see that to be the case when the same regime went out here after seeing a season of Michael Carter at a guy who's 5'8", 203 pounds, barely cracks 200. And yes, there are some exceptions out there. There are some players that are insanely skilled, like a guy, CMC, 205 pounds, was the RB1 in 2019. But guess what? Now he can't stay healthy. He can't sustain that level of usage and that level of work in that Panthers offense, or at least he's shown us the last 2 seasons that he's been struggling with that. You go out and get a bigger back, a guy who is, again, higher, more highly coveted, I should say, in terms of the draft capital that the same front office regime invested into him here. It's clear to me that Breece Hall is the priority. They want to get him the football, and he has all the skills, all the traits he needs to dominate at that position group. Now, last but not least, here is Ezekiel Elliott. If you were paying attention at the start of today's video, I'm sure you guys were. I have faith in you. You guys are the, upper echelon of fantasy football players for this season. I told you to pay attention to the ADPs. After all, the title of today's video is Must Draft Running Backs in the Middle Rounds of Your Leagues this year. And as you'll notice, every single 3 of the 3 players I touched on today comes from the 4th round. And actually 2 of them come from the first half of the 4th round. So I wanted to talk about that for just a second here before we totally dive into Ezekiel Elliott, and I forget to bring it up at the conclusion of today's video. So basically what I wanted to talk about is I hate dead zone running backs this year. We're talking 5th and 6th round, heck, even most of the 7th round running backs I'm staying away from. I am not bullish on guys like Josh Jacobs, Elijah Mitchell, even David Montgomery, who are all going to see nice and run in their offenses. They're going to see, situational involvement. They're going to be the lead backs for their teams. But, just to kind of start poking holes through some offensive outlooks for this year, reasons for concern, Washington, let's start there. Antonio Gibson. Besides the fact that I have my concerns and the fact that the team drafted a very large running back out of the University of Alabama, Brian Robinson, who I could easily see stealing some third down usage, some goal line opportunities. You've got a guy in J.D. McKissick who re-signed with the team as a bona fide scat back, a guy who's going to get out in space, catch passes passes for this team. You're seeing two other running backs who can infringe upon his ability to find success in that offense. And then you've got the report just a couple of days ago that Gibson fumbled and was demoted down to second team reps. That is bad news. Shows that the leash is very short for him. And what could quickly become just lead back duties could become situational back duties if Brian Robinson is to come in here and outperform him and just show that he's a very valuable player. Something also from my film study that I love about Brian Robinson, this being the rookie third-round pick for the Washington Commanders, I believe I said football team earlier, sorry about that, is the fact that he's a very good third-down pass protector. He picks up blitzes very well. That's another way that he can get on the field and potentially see Gibson subbing out. Let's go to Elijah Mitchell. His rookie season, played just 11 games. He got worn down. That power rushing offense in San Francisco takes a toll on smaller running backs. What was I just saying earlier? Yeah, Michael Carter's a talented pass-catching back, 5'8", 203 pounds. Elijah Mitchell is not that much bigger. He only goes about 205 pounds. And for a guy who is in a violent offense, one of the most physical football teams in the league, he is going to see wear and tear on his body. It's a concoction of 5 different nagging injuries that held him out for contests last year. So it's not like he had one fluky injury. It was ribs, it was a knee, it was a shoulder, it was a lot of things all mashed together. And he just said, Coach Shanahan can't go out there and play this Sunday. So I don't know if he actually said that, but the point being here, there's wear and tear. You've got big guys like Tyron Davis-Price in the backfield who actually trimmed down a little bit from 232 pounds pre-draft. He looks really, really good in camp right now. And I could see a situation where Mitchell, San Francisco's had 5 straight seasons of different leading rushers. Maybe Tyron Davis-Price comes in here and it makes it 6 straight seasons if he's everything that Trey Sermon wasn't able to be in 2021. The final guy, Josh Jacobs, has little commitment shown to him from the Las Vegas Raiders front office. You've got a guy who had his 5th-year option decline. Now this is more so issues for dynasty purposes. But still a guy who you're seeing guys like Kenyon Drake come back healthy this year. Maybe he has a passing involvement with this team. You've also got guys like Zamir White, who had a lot of run in that Hall of Fame game and was a player who actually looked a bit better than I expected in the receiving game. There's also been reports that he will likely not be a workhorse running back for this season, although I do think the Raiders take a step in the right direction this year, have a higher scoring output offensively, obviously opening the door for more goal line rushing touchdowns for whoever that lead back is or chosen player in that area of the field. I still have my reservations about Jacobs. You can go to Clyde Edwards-Helaire next. You can go all over the map here. The moral of the story, we've been talking for 5 minutes now about dead zone running backs, is I don't like them. There aren't many options that I'm really willing to take here. And so for me, if I'm drafting a running back in the middle rounds of my draft, quote unquote, it's going to be these guys that are in the 4th round. The 4th round is kind of my cutoff here. It's Breece Hall, it's Ezekiel Elliott, it is Travis Etienne. And then after that, I'm pretty skittish of drafting players at that territory. So now that I've done quite a bit of yapping about those dead zone running backs, let's actually get into Ezekiel Elliott here. Let's break down this fantasy football situation for this season and obviously cover why in redraft formats I think he's such a good asset to have. Now, he is certainly not a sexy or flashy pick, whatever you want to call it, for this year, but this is definitely someone who I think has steady Eddie reliability, if you're with me here. I think that this is a player who has a lot of potential to be just drug across the course of the season and see just enough work to put up very low-end RB1 numbers should he stay healthy. Obviously, last season, the PCL injury for a lot of casual fantasy players and NFL fans for that matter, it gets really overlooked because Zeke wasn't missing games with this injury, but what it was doing was kind of zapping his explosiveness, impacting his week-to-week play, and making it so that he had to have a lot of pain tolerance to be able to suit up on Sundays and see a high level of opportunity. That's why we saw after week 4, when he sustained that issue at Carolina, his touches per game decreased by almost 4 opportunities per game. So there is definitely something to be said for that PCL issue. I think coming into this season, it's a big deal. And while I think the 2 statements I'm about to reference in just 2 seconds here are very clownish behavior, they do speak to how I expect the direction of this team to be presented moving forward here into 2022. So the first thing I want to say say is I'm going to paraphrase a quote from Mike McCarthy at a press conference where he basically alluded to Ezekiel Elliott as a core player for the Dallas Cowboys franchise. Basically, a core player is someone that you place a great amount of value and respect for in your organization. Basically saying that of all the players in your team, the core guys are kind of your priority pieces. That's what you're building the rest of your franchise around, and they are the most important players to your overall success. Mike McCarthy said, he vocalized this, that is the case for Dallas this year. That is how he views Ezekiel Elliott for this offense. In an offseason where we've seen so much Tony Pollard hype, so much chatter in the fantasy community about how much Tony Pollard's going to be involved this year, he's going to take over, he'll be the RB1 by the season's end, all of this stuff, what Brass is telling you in Dallas is the exact opposite. To go even further, I'm a person who believes that Mike McCarthy, I'm a Green Bay Packer fan, so you can either take this as bias or some extra level of expertise, whatever the case may be, pick your poison, is that I think Mike is just kind of a puppet for Jerry Jones. I think that Mike McCarthy doesn't really have a full grasp on the situation. I think that his coaching techniques are slightly outdated. His offensive play calling system is a bit pedestrian and kind of, sidewalk chalk. It's elementary. Let's just put it that way. So I believe that in order to sustain job security here, Mike will do whatever Jerry Jones tells him to do. That statement sounds an awful lot like what this Jerry Jones statement says here, where Jerry Jones on a radio show basically started off by saying that Zeke is what the offense in Dallas needs to be predicated upon. The offense starts with Zeke and it ends with Dak Prescott. This is a team that he says, yes, Tony Pollard will be involved. He should have a role. He's an explosive and talented player, but Tony's more of a guy who should be involved in the receiving game, someone who's maybe more of a third down scat back or a change of pace player, where Zeke is kind of the thunder. It's starting these drives off with a bang, putting that shoulder down, setting the tone physically, and getting this team into the end zone. They want to have a balanced attack, and Jerry Jones basically outlined how important Zeke is to this offense's success this season. So I believe if Jerry's passing down this message, Mike McCarthy will have no choice, or really won't have the courage to go outside of the confines of Jones's wishes here. I believe Ezekiel Elliott will maintain firmly the starting role, the lead job, and a workhorse position in this offense again, should he stay healthy for this year. So I think he can be, like I said, a low-level RB1, somewhere between the RB10 and 12 range overall, finishing this year, dragging himself to the finish line. No, he won't be insanely explosive. He's not going to be necessarily this super high-ceiling player on a week-to-week basis, but what he gives you is consistency, a floor value, opportunity continuously in an offense. Zeke's a player who's had 8 or more touchdowns in every single season of his career, showing that red zone involvement, red area involvement in an offense in Dallas here is a frequent and constant relationship with him for this team. So that's something I don't expect to fade. A guy who was 5th in red zone touches last year with 50 overall. 12 of those came on the goal line. That's a fantastic number. Think about how easy it is to score 6 points in fantasy, getting a goal line rep. All you got to do is tumble over the pile, and you're into the end zone for 6 fantasy points in our standard scoring league. So, there's a lot of stuff to like here. He's getting valuable touches. He's seeing opportunity in areas of the field where it counts. And this is a team that last year was 8th in team run plays per game with 27.6 rushing opportunities per contest. That is very good, obviously, for Zeke. And he was top 10 in snap share despite the PCL, despite the Tony Pollard involvement. He was still a guy that was able to be out there producing points. And again, he may not be flashy. The numbers aren't going to be awesome. He's not going to win your league for you. He's not going to win your week for you. But this is a guy that can hold down the fort, whether you want to have him as a very safe redraft RB2 here, or he's a guy who it's not quite qualifying for an RB0 draft strategy, but I could even see a justification for Zeke in the second half of the 4th round being taken as the top running back for a team looking to implement a very wide receiver heavy draft and just build around kind of a lighter running back room for this season. So those were our 3 middle round must-have running backs, must draft, must buy, whatever you want to call it. These are are players you want on your fantasy teams for 2022 redraft fantasy football. So if you guys enjoyed, as always, make sure to drop down, click that subscribe button, check out some of the links in the description of today's video. If you want extra help, if you want me to help you set your lineups every week this season, scan the QR code at the top of the screen. That'll take you to our website, sizzlefantasy.com, and get you basically checking out the options to get a hold of the draft guides for this year, which again do come with in-depth lineup advice from me personally via the community Discord server. How that works is basically once you sign up, I send you a custom invite link via email, and then you can basically just start DMing me and asking me your questions whenever they come up. So basically, I'll set your lineups for you every week. I'll help you make sure your teams are in order, and obviously I will help you with your drafts if you have not done so yet this season. So a ton of good stuff to check out, you guys. Check out sizzlefantasy.com. Check out the links in the description. I'll probably pin a comment as well. If you haven't gotten the draft guides yet, you can click on that and it'll send you over there. We've got a ton of stuff. Sign up for our email list with free fantasy content here. I'm trying to get another article put together. It's been a busy couple of weeks, but I'll see you tomorrow with my must-have late round running backs. I'll see you there, and YouTube's about to pop up 2 more videos that they think you should watch next, hopefully from me. Peace out.